Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at SpunkyOldBroad.com. And now, back to the show.
I am back with Marilyn King, our two-time Olympic pentathlete and our peak performance expert and peace enthusiast. And, there's one thing I want to ask you about, Marilyn. You said that your grandmother was illiterate, but she was also your most important teacher. And I can identify with that. My mom was not illiterate, but she didn't graduate high school because in those days you went to work to send your brother to college. And yet, when people say, who was my mentor, I always say my mom. Who was the smartest person you knew? My mom. She just gave me a great education in terms of who I am as a person and who I could be and what was important in life. So what did your grandmother teach you that you treasure?
Well, I love the question because my mother's mother, Marceline, really continues to be my greatest teacher. And, she died 35 years ago, but she grew up in Nova Scotia, Canada. And my great-grandmother ran 2 farms and a boarding house because my great-grandfather was an alcoholic, like many men on that side of the family. And at a certain point, my great-grandmother needed more help, and she pulled my grandmother, Marceline, out of school in the 4th grade. And then when my grandmother married, my grandfather also turned out to be an alcoholic. He came to the United States as an ornamental plaster worker and said he would send money home for my grandmother and the 6 kids, which he never did. So I tell you this story because the story of my grandmother packing up her kids, which included my mother, slaughtering the chickens, making chicken sandwiches, putting them all in a shoebox, getting on a train to come to the United States, and people saying that, they'll never let you in. You have no means of support. You got 6 kids with you. They're not going to let you pass the border. And my grandmother would tell the story that her response was, no man's going to stop me. And so she arrives on the train platform in Boston, Massachusetts, and she says she saw this very handsome man, big, tall man with a nice black coat on and a tall black hat. And he noticed her and he said to her, are all these kids with you? And she said, well, would they be with me if they weren't? And he said, what are you doing? And she says, I'm looking for my husband, Fred Gillis. He goes, Fred Gillis? She says, yeah. He goes, I'm looking for Fred Gillis. I'm his boss. And, we give him his paycheck on Friday and he disappears and drinks for a few days. And by Tuesday or Wednesday, we go find him, sober him up and put him back to work. So he packed my grandmother and my mother and the other kids all in the car and took them to a rooming house and reunited my grandfather. And so for me, that was an early example of Olympian thinking. She was passionate about it. She had a crystal clear vision and she moved into action. So I learned Olympian thinking from my grandmother.
What a great story. I love that story. I mean, I'm already seeing it on one of the Hallmark channels or something because I can just see it. I mean, it's so true and so typical. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you also talk about the importance of your story of now. And I know that there are people who say you have to live in the now, everything happens in the now, and it doesn't matter about anything else. So what does that mean to you, and why is it so important?
Yeah, and I think that what you're referring to is something I also feel is very important in terms of that notion of being present and being in the present. What I'm referring to is a little different in that your story of now really is a predictor for your own future and for what can happen in the world. So many people's story of now has some theme in it about, ain't it awful? And, oh, what can we do? And there's nothing I could do that could really impact that. And all of this blah, blah, blah kind of stuff. But because of the work that I do and the privileges that I've had to travel internationally, both before and since my Olympic career, I have had the privilege to, speak and be around people at the United Nations who years ago, for example, were very clear that if we wound up with 20 billion people on the planet, that it was completely unsustainable and we'd go to heck in a handbasket. So they focused tremendous energy on what we could do to stabilize the population, which is now going to be so at 10 billion instead of 20. But a lot of people still think, oh my gosh, population and all this, we've gone. There are challenges, but the fact that we have this, my story of now says, you know what, we've got a global success. We cut the horrible prediction in half and we can sustain 10 billion. And other people went to work on hunger, that hunger was the biggest problem. So even though the population has gone up, the number of people who die from hunger has gone down, and they're predicting when hunger will be history on the planet. So I could give you example after example after example where people have a story of now that's based on old, outdated, or incomplete information that has them feel dispirited. And if you feel dispirited about something, you are not going to have creative solutions and be engaged in those solutions. My story of now is very different because I've had the privilege of being around people who've been thinking and working globally and systemically on every problem that you can imagine. And they have systemic solutions. So to shift people from being dispirited and poorly informed and misinformed to being fully informed about the solutions that are out there, about the things that you care about, will have many more people get engaged and will accelerate the next evolution of peace.
So how do we get people who are not exposed the way you are, and possibly I am in a minor way, to want to A, find out more about what can be done, and B, have that desire, instead of saying, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. How do we get them interested in this?
Well, I would make a distinction here. I believe that people actually do care, but because of the old, outdated information and feeling dispirited, they just kind of put their head down and try to be okay with them and their family and do a little something nice in their community. But one, I believe that people actually care, but they are not as effective as we would like them to be because of the mindset. So when I came across Avon Madison and Pathways to Peace, who were one of the three entities responsible for creating the International Day of Peace, which is September 21st every year, and got it unanimously declared by the United Nations in 1983, I thought, wow, if there was one day a year where around the world, people got new information, updated information, inspirational stories about the solutions to the problems that are out there. Well, back in 1983, I say kind of playfully, it was, just a few people and a candle and kumbaya at the United Nations. And now, all these years later, it's celebrated in 153 countries around the world, and there are 500,000 people that show up in the square. And so my answer to your question is, I believe that the International Day of Peace, as a day that breaks through that old, outdated information and shows people the kinds of things that are going on, about the environment, about education, about governance, about all of these different areas, that people will become inspired and see. I'll give you one really easy example. Paul Hawken has a new book out called Drawdown, and he did all of the research to figure out all the different things and what are the top 100 things that are being done that are effective for the environment and are cost effective. So anyone listening, if you care about the environment, you think like that's the biggest thing out there and you don't really know what you can do that will make a difference, Paul Hawken already did your homework for you. So you go to that book, you find that you think it's about planting trees, and you find out what the initiatives are about that and how you can be involved. So it's just one example of whatever it is you think is a key issue that needs to be resolved in order for us to move to the next evolution of peace. There's somebody out there who's already figured it out. You can find out who's doing it well and how you can be on that team to help make that happen.
That, I think, is the key, Marilyn, is I'm not sure people know where to look to find the answers to their particular passions. You'd think with the internet and Google and everything, you'd be able to research it and find it. But I think that there are still people out there who don't know what step one is. So what would your
Right.
suggestion be if whatever the person has a passion
Yeah.
about, what would be step one?
Well, I'm going to stay in the peace domain around that, and certainly outside of peace, the answer is slightly different. But I want to be really clear with anyone who's listening, who's interested about peace on Earth and the next evolution. You can go to the United Nations website and look at the incredible successes when they set the Millennium Development Goals and how so many of them were reached, way ahead of time around these aggressive goals, and the new Sustainable Development Goals around hunger and education and just all kinds of things. So just by going to the UN website and looking for the Sustainable Development Goals, you can see which of those, sings for you and what organizations and how you can be involved. So for people who don't know but care about peace, that's the first place that I would direct them.
That's interesting because, first of all, I have to admit, I would never have thought about going there. And number two, what a great testimonial it is to the United Nations that has happened, because how many people think the United Nations is just there, that they don't do anything. And that,
Wow.
you know that.
That's just ignorance.
That.
That's just ignorance.
Right.
Yeah.
But you've heard that, I'm sure, over and over. And
well, there are political conversations out there, but there is no organization in the history of the planet that has convened more summits on the rights of the child or the rights of women or the rights of the environment or the rights of indigenous people. There's no place on the planet where more of those convenings bringing together the most concerned people and the wisest people around every issue that you can imagine, and has taken that, collective wisdom and put it into strategic initiatives that have been supported.
Well, so, I'm glad. I'm really glad. And I know you talk about ignorance is no longer an excuse.
That's
and
right.
as it relates to peace. So what do you believe people need to know in order to be effective in their activism?
It's just being knowledgeable. Don't just spout off some, piece of information that you found on the internet because, somebody who has a different agenda. Get the facts. I mean, I teach people thinking skills through a set of hats. So Edward de Bono, said the white hat is about the facts and the green hat is about creativity. And so the different colored hats, I'm creating a hat called That's a Fact. Because it is a new mental capability that we need. We're not just listening to Walter Cronkite and believing that that's the truth and the fact, right? We now have to have a new mental facility, like a new muscle or a new skill developed, to be able to discern and distinguish fact from opinion, from spin, from fake news, so to speak.
Yeah, and just think, a year ago, the word fake news really didn't exist.
Yeah. So the answer to your question it's that ignorance is no longer an excuse, if it ever was. But now we live in a world in which you can know just about anything that you really want to know. And so if you care about the environment, just start anywhere. But I think Paul Hawkins' book is a great place to go. As a matter of fact, I have to tell you one other one. There's a wonderful book by a man who just passed away recently in his early 90s, Gene Sharp. And the book is called Dictatorship to Democracy. And he brings forth a lifetime's worth of work on successful nonviolent revolutions. So whether it's a dictatorship or a religious regime or an elite regime, he shows what the components are that allow people to come together to withdraw power and legitimacy from a power structure and have the opportunity to replace that power structure. So that's kind of a roundabout way of answering your question. What should people do if they want to do something that will make a difference? If you think governance is the biggest issue, you can read Gene Sharp's work. If you think it's so find the people who are the experts who have both the information about the history, the status, and the future, who's doing what, and how you can be involved.
Fabulous. That is great. Well, I'll tell you, you talk about beginning your day the Olympian way, and I have a different philosophy. I say you've got to wake up with a smile, you've got to go to bed with a smile, and all the stuff that happens in between is not as important as knowing that you're at peace with yourself. So what is beginning your day the Olympian way? What does it mean and why is it so important?
Well, thank you. It's a number of years ago, I thought, wow, if I were to die tomorrow, what can I leave behind? That would be one thing. If they put it on my tombstone, or if everybody understood or engaged, just one thing of all of the wonderful things you've learned and discovered and tools that you use and teach and all of that kind of stuff. It's begin your day the Olympian way, because everything is like the first domino, right, in the dominoes. And what it means is, it's like that, one new thought can change your life. The day before I went to bed thinking, I'm kind of an also-ran and I want to do well at the track meet today, and this is a good way for me to make friends. And I trained hard and I worked hard. But the next day I'm waking up going, I could be in the Olympics. And my brain, your eyebrows go up, neurons start to fire in your head, your heart rate increases, you have endorphins flowing, right? And it's like, well, if I'm going to be in the Olympics, what do I need to do today? And in the beginning, you don't know the answer. But you find the answer by waking up every day, envisioning your gold. So I've been waking up every day envisioning that we could see peace in my lifetime, that we could see the next evolution of peace in my lifetime if people who care were well informed and knew what to do, because they would do it. So what it really means is your gold is not necessarily, and I'm not saying GOAL, by the way, I'm saying GOLD. And so if we think about Michael Phelps, he woke up every morning going 8 gold medals. And it made him think differently. It had different thoughts that led to different behaviors. And lo and behold, he accomplished something that's beyond incredible. Other people wake up every morning and think, I don't care about the bus strike, going on right now. I'm going to make sure I have the money to get my kids into college. I never had the chance to go. That's that person's gold. So when you wake up in the morning and you envision your gold, just like I was thinking I could be in the Olympics, was exciting. And that smile that you talked about, I would get a smile on my face. And I'd be blinking my eyes trying to figure out what I needed to do that day. And I got better and better at figuring out more effectively what I should do that day. So begin your day the Olympian way is actually an act of courage. To wake up in the morning and envision your gold, I could be this. I could do that. I could accomplish whatever it is. Your mind goes into what the neuroscientists now call cognitive dissonance. And people are misusing that term. But what it really means is that the mind can't hold two conflicting beliefs at the same time. So if I say I could be in the Olympics, but I know I live on Staten Island and I'm not really the best athlete, my brain tries to create thoughts and ideas that bridge those two things. So that's where the whole creativity thing comes from. So if you begin your day the Olympian way with some outrageous thought or desire, you automatically put your brain into cognitive dissonance. And if you can hold the distinction between the outrageous goal and your current reality and your left brain little negative thinking, your brain will come up with new thoughts that lead to new behaviors that increase the possibility of you achieving your goal.
I love that, Marilyn. I have to tell you that when I was young, I was in business at 21, so I had this gold, and my son says to me all the time, "Well, Mom, you had all these goals, GOAL, and I thought to myself, I really didn't have goals. I had this passion that I was going to do this, and I did it. That's what I kept doing. But when I stopped to think about it, I really didn't have what you would call goals. I made up my mind I wanted something, and I went after it. And
that was your, like I was saying, I could be in the Olympics. That was yours about business.
Exactly.
And all those other things emerged because you began your day the Olympian way every day.
But you know something, I think as I've grown older and as I become more aware and I listen to more people, I think I've lost a little bit of that gold because now I didn't even think about what could go wrong. I just did it. Now I weigh, well, this could happen. Oh, that could happen. Well, and so that is what happens, I think, when you grow a little older and you listen to people and other things get in your way, I think then it's harder to keep your Olympian thinking.
Yeah. And I would wholeheartedly agree. And if you walked around my home, you would laugh because, sitting to the right of me right now is a set of 3x5 file cards. And each one of them has some little, thing in it, and I have had to put things up around my home and in my journal and in my space that reflect back to me that I could be in the Olympics, that we could see peace in my lifetime. Because when I'm out there in the world and I talk about these things, many people get a furrowed brow and all their negative thinking comes up, and I don't get mirrored back. Wow, that is really cool. Like, tell me more. Or, yeah, me too. I'm up to thus and such. So I have had to create within my own home kind of like my own cheering squad, so to speak. And I don't want to misconstrue this. I mean, I have wonderful networks of people, and I am inspired because of the global systemic thinkers that I'm connected with, but most of them don't live in my neighborhood.
Exactly, exactly, right.
So you do need to create an environment for yourself in which you reflect back, yesterday I only had gone this far, or last month or last year, here's where I was relative to this. You have to have ways to have mirrored back to you, that your dream is alive, that you can do this, that there are people there rooting for you. They'll be there cheering for you when you, stand on the podium. They'll help you up when you fall down and skin your knee. And what's that wonderful quote about a friend is someone who knows the song of your soul and sings it back to you when you've forgotten the words?
So true.
That's a really poor, rendition of it. But, we really do need to create a supportive environment that these goals and dreams that we are fully capable of achieving, even if they seem unachievable, that we've got people there who are rooting for us.
Well, I'm sure people are going to want to know how to get in touch with you. So tell us about your website. Tell us about any offerings you might have, on your website that our people could take advantage of or might want to buy. So how can people find out more about you, and how can they get in touch with you?
Well, thank you. Yes, my website it used to be Beyond Sports, because what I do is certainly beyond it's not about sports at all. But the website is actually way beyond sports because of the business education and peace component. So www.waybeyondsports.com is how you can find me. And on the front landing page, you can actually free download 2 PDFs that show you the Passion, Vision, Action framework and a document that shows you what happens when you're missing any one of those 3 components, which is a deal breaker. So you can download that for free from Way Beyond Sports landing page. And also on the landing page, there is a guided imagery audio that I created called Begin Your Day the Olympian Way, the fast track to gold for leaders. And it takes you through how to begin your day the Olympian way. And it's for more than just people who are leaders. But those are the best ways to kind of get introduced and connected to Olympian thinking.
Well, I have to say that I have downloaded that, and I also have your pamphlet on Begin Your Day the Olympian Way, which you gifted to us while we were at the same event. So I can tell everybody it is well worth getting.
Yes.
So so it has been absolutely fantastic. I am delighted to have had you with us, Marilyn. It's and also because this is a program for women 50 plus. And again, Marilyn is doing everything all the time. There is no reason for her to ever stop doing what she's doing. And that's the whole key. This is the message we want to give to you. Everybody can do this. So go to her website, waybeyondsports.com, download those 2 free PDFs, get her guided imagery. It is well worth it, and something that I know everybody will benefit from. Thank you so much for being with us today, Marilyn, and continued best wishes on your goal for world peace.
Well, thank you so much. It's been great to be with you, and I wake up every day on fire. I begin my day the Olympian way because the shift is on, and we're part of the shift to the world that we all want to live in, and people are learning how to be engaged as part of the team that's making that happen. So thank you for the invitation.
Oh, you're welcome.